In our ancient scrolls, before the fall of the Voidborn Empire, it was written that a true king never needs to remind others of his crown. Our last sovereign, Meref the Magnificent, would have done well to heed those words before his pride brought ruin to our people. Now, centuries later, as I sit in the hold of this massive vessel called the battleship Normandy, I find myself pondering those teachings once again. My name is Freeb, though the humans would struggle to pronounce it properly with their limited vocal ranges. I was a raid captain of the Voidborn Remnant, or perhaps I should say was, given recent events. 12 successful raids on human colonies had earned me a reputation among our people. 12 perfect strikes where our cloaking technology and hit and run tactics proved superior to humanity's vaunted military might. Then we encountered the Texas Knights. I remember the exact moment our luck ran out. We'd identified New Laredo Colony as an easy target, a fledgling settlement on the edge of human space, its defense system still being calibrated. Our scans showed minimal military presence. The perfect opportunity to remind humanity that the descendants of the Voidborn Empire still ruled the dark between stars. We didn't realize the colony's founding ceremony was being blessed by knights until it was too late. Contact, bearing 03 Mark 7, my sensor officer reported, his facial tentacles writhing in confusion. That's impossible. They're tracking us through our cloak. I still see it in my sleep cycles, that distinctive blue fire from their quantum spurs, cutting through the void like ancient plasma knives. 3 knights, their power armor gleaming with battle scars that told stories of 100 victories, moving with impossible precision through space itself. Evasive pattern Sigma. I ordered, but even as the words left my primary speaking gland, I knew it was futile. Those quantum spurs were leaving trails that somehow bent reality around them. Our best stealth technology, stolen from the ruins of our empire's research facilities, might as well have been primitive chameleon scales for all the good it did us. The first night, marked by a Stetson that seemed to absorb starlight, breached our command ship's hull without firing a shot, simply walked through our quantum-hardened barriers like they were morning mist. The second and third followed, their movements synchronized in a way that spoke of centuries of shared combat doctrine. Impossible, my weapons officer whispered, his warrior caste markings pulsing with fear. Our shields, y'all might want to reconsider your tactical approach, the lead knight drawled, voice carrying clearly through our ship's internal comms despite us never giving him access. His hand rested casually on a sword that hummed with energies our sensors couldn't quantify. I am not ashamed to admit that my face tendrils rippled with ancestral terror. In that moment, I understood what our long-dead kings must have felt when they first realized their empire was falling, the absolute certainty that you are facing something beyond your comprehension. We fought, of course. Pride and desperation make for a potent combination. Our entire fleet, 12 ships of Voidborn design enhanced with stolen technology from a dozen races, against 3 knights in powered armor. It wasn't even a battle, it was a lesson. Ship by ship, system by system, they disabled our fleet with surgical precision. No casualties, no explosions, just perfect, methodical neutralization of every weapon, every engine, every piece of technology we'd relied on. Their quantum spurs left trails of blue fire that our tactical computers tried to classify as everything from weapon discharges to spatial anomalies, before simply displaying error messages in defeated resignation. When they reached my command chair, I expected execution. It's what our kings would have done. It's what I would have done if our positions were reversed. Instead, the lead knight tipped his Stetson and said something that chilled my spine ridges more than any threat could have. The general would like a word with y'all. As they escorted us to their ship, a vessel that made our fleet look like children's toys, I caught glimpses of markings on their armor. A single star, a cannon, and beneath them words that my translator struggled with before finally rendering them in a way that made my secondary heart skip. Come and take it. I didn't understand the significance then. I would soon enough, because we weren't just being taken to face justice. We were being brought before the one human my people had only heard whispers about, the one they called General Kennedy, the one who, I would soon learn, carried authority that would have made our ancient kings tremble in their void-sealed thrones. But that's getting ahead of the story. First, we had to survive the journey through the heart of Texas Knight's power. And let me tell you, my clutchmates, that journey taught us more about true sovereignty than all our empire's histories combined. The battleship Normandy defied everything I thought I knew about human vessels. In our fallen empire's time, We prided ourselves on ships that blended form and function, elegant curves housing devastating weapons. But this was something else entirely. From the outside, it resembled ancient human warships I'd seen in captured historical records, all straight lines and proud angles. But watching it move through space was like watching poetry written in quantum mechanics. Reality seemed to bend around it, not from brute force like our ships, but as if space itself was politely stepping aside. "Mind your step," the lead knight advised as we boarded through a docking tube that thrummed with energies our sensors couldn't classify. "Artificial gravity takes some getting used to for first-timers." He wasn't wrong. Each step felt like walking on sacred ground. The deck plates beneath our feet weren't just metal, they were made of something that pulsed with a subtle rhythm, like a heartbeat in quantum form. The corridors were lined with what I first took to be mere decorations. Flags, ancient weapons, spurs that looked too primitive for space combat. But my sensor implants told a different story. Each artifact radiated power that made my face tendrils curl. That antique rifle mounted beside a vintage photograph. It was bending light around it in ways that shouldn't be possible. The flag that seemed to be made of simple fabric. My most sensitive scanners returned readings usually associated with quantum singularities. "Those are from the Alamo," one of our escorts explained, noting my attention. "The original one, back on Earth." He said it casually, as if displaying reality-warping artifacts from humanity's homeworld was perfectly normal. Every human we passed wore some form of what I now recognized as Texan regalia. Stetson seemed standard issue, but it was the spurs that caught my attention. Each set hummed with that distinctive blue fire, though none burned quite as bright as the knight's. But what truly unsettled my warrior's instincts was how these humans treated our captors. It wasn't mere military respect. When the knights passed, conversations stopped. Heads bowed slightly. Some touched the brims of their hats in what I realized was a gesture of deep reverence. These weren't just elite warriors. They were something more. "Through here," the lead knight directed, gesturing toward what appeared to be a training ground. The chamber was massive, larger than our entire fleet's combined cargo space. But it was what was happening inside that made my secondary heart stutter. Knights were training. Dozens of them, their power armor moving with that impossible grace we'd witnessed during our capture. But this was different. "Sacred void," my weapons officer whispered, his translator failing to fully convey his awe. They were holding back. He was right. When they disabled our fleet, the knights had moved with precision and control. Here, unleashed in practice, they were something else entirely. Their quantum spurs left trails that wrote equations in space itself. Their swords cut through training targets in ways that made reality hiccup. Two knights were sparring in the center ring, their movements too fast for even my enhanced vision to track. Each clash of their blades released bursts of energy that my implants classified as everything from quantum fluctuations to temporary violations of universal constants. "Standard afternoon practice," our escort commented, as if we weren't watching warriors casually rewrite physics. "You should see them when they're really trying." That's when it hit me. The knights who'd captured us, who'd dismantled our fleet with surgical precision, had been operating at a fraction of their true capability. They hadn't defeated us, they'd contained us, like adults carefully handling rowdy children. We passed what looked like a museum display. Inside was a single quantum spur, badly damaged, mounted on a pedestal of what appeared to be ordinary marble. The plaque beneath it read, "Last spur of Knight Captain Travis, Battle of New Alamo, 2187. I shall never surrender nor retreat." The energy readings from that broken spur made my sensor implants shriek in protest. "Coming up on the bridge," the lead knight announced. "General Kennedy is waiting." He paused, then added something that made no sense to my translator. "Remember to remove your hats when you meet him." As we approached the massive doors that presumably led to their command center, I noticed something odd. The knights were adjusting their armor, checking their appearance with a precision that spoke of deep respect rather than mere military protocol. "One more thing," our escort added, his voice carrying that distinctive drawl that somehow made his words more significant. "The general's going to offer you a choice. Just remember, Texas remembers both its friends and its enemies. Forever." The doors began to open, revealing a chamber that put all the technological wonders we'd seen so far to shame. But it wasn't the quantum displays or the reality-bending artifacts that caught my attention. It was the simple Stetson, worn and battle-scarred, hanging beside the entrance. The plaque beneath it read only, "Remember the Alamo." My face tendrils twisted in confusion. Why would such a simple object be displayed with such prominence? What power could it possibly hold? I was about to find out, and in doing so, learn what true leadership meant in the age of quantum kings. In the ancient halls of the Voidborn Empire, our kings sat upon thrones carved from quantum crystallized starlight. They wore crowns that bent gravity and robes that distorted reality. When they spoke, their words were amplified by technology that made their voices echo through both space and time. General Kennedy wore a battle-scarred Stetson and power armor bearing the signs of actual combat. The chamber we entered defied easy description. It was clearly a command center, but designed unlike anything I'd seen in my centuries of raiding. The outer ring reminded me of historical images of something called the Pentagon from old Earth, but the central space was an exact replica of another ancient structure, the Alamo, our escorts had called it. Tactical displays floated in the air, showing real-time data from what must have been thousands of sectors. But they weren't arranged in traditional military formation. Instead, they formed patterns that reminded me of the quantum spurs blue fire trails. "Welcome to Texas Command," the lead knight announced, removing his Stetson. Every other human in the room did the same, including the holographic avatars representing distant ship commanders. General Kennedy stood at the central tactical display, studying a simulation of what I recognized as our final battle. But it wasn't showing our defeat, it was showing all the ways they could have disabled us even faster, had they chosen to. "Afternoon," he said, turning to face us. His voice carried that same drawl as the knight's, but there was something else in it, something that made my face tendrils quiver with ancestral recognition. This was how our ancient kings must have sounded, before power corrupted them. He wore 5 stars on his collar, but they weren't mere rank insignia. Each one pulsed with energy that made my sensor implants beg for mercy. The quantum spurs at his boots left trails of blue fire that wrote equations I recognized from our empire's most advanced theoretical physics. "Freeb of the Voidborn Remnant," he said, pronouncing my name perfectly, something that should have been impossible with human vocal cords. 12 colonies raided. 27 ships disabled. 0 civilian casualties. That last part made my secondary heart skip. How did he Wall thought we hadn't noticed that? There was something like approval in his voice. "How you always hit the automated facilities, the unmanned stations. How you disabled rather than destroyed, took only what you needed to survive. We are not barbarians," I managed, my translator struggling to convey the complex harmonics of my native tongue. "No," Kennedy agreed, touching the brim of his Stetson. "You're survivors, refugees from an empire that forgot what power was for." With a gesture, he brought up new displays. I recognized them with shock. They were scenes from our history. The fall of the Voidborn Empire, the corruption of our last kings, the scattering of our people. "Texas remembers," he said simply. "We remember how your people helped Earth colonies during the first expansion, before your empire fell. We remember how your last king betrayed those alliances, and we remember the price your people paid for his pride." My face tendrils writhed in shame and surprise. These were stories passed down through generations of my people, yet here was a human who spoke of them as if they were yesterday's news. "Sir," I began, then corrected myself as my translator finally found the right context. "General, we raid because we must. Our ships are 3 generations out of date," he finished. "Your weapons are held together with salvage parts. Your fuel cells are running on borrowed time." He gestured at the tactical display, which now showed detailed scans of our fleet. "Y'all have been surviving on the edge for so long, you've forgotten there's another way." That's when I noticed something odd. The knights who'd captured us were standing at parade rest, but their stances spoke not of military discipline, but of absolute trust. They weren't guarding their general, they were standing with him. "The colonies you've been raiding," Kennedy continued, "have been asking for protection." He touched another control, and the display shifted to show dozens of settlements, all bearing that distinctive star and cannon emblem. We were coming out here anyway. But now we've got ourselves what my granddaddy used to call an opportunity. He stepped forward, and I swear by the void, reality itself seemed to hold its breath. "Here's the deal," he said, his voice carrying that weight of absolute authority that our ancient kings had tried so hard to fake. "You've got 2 choices. First one's simple, you face Texas justice for your raids. Fair trial, full process, likely end up doing reconstruction work on the colonies you hit." My face tendrils tightened. It was more mercy than raiders usually received. But it was his next words that changed everything. "Second choice," he smiled, and it reminded me of the way space itself curved around their quantum drives. "You join us." "Join Texas?" The very idea made my translator stutter. Join the Frontier Defense Force, he clarified. Put those raids in your past and help us protect the colonies you used to hit. Your people have forgotten more about void combat than most races will ever learn. Sure would be ashamed to waste all that knowledge in a rehabilitation center. I found myself studying his Stetson of all things. It wasn't decorated with quantum crystals or reality-warping runes. It was just a hat, worn by a leader who didn't need ornaments to prove his authority. Why? I asked finally. Why offer us this chance? Kennedy's response was to pull something from his armor. It was a piece of metal, ancient and scarred, mounted on a simple display stand. You know what this is? I shook my head. This here's a piece of the original Gonzalez cannon, he said, and every knight in the room touched their Stetsons. Back before space travel, before quantum spurs, a group of settlers were told to give up their weapons. Their response became our motto. Come and take it, I recalled from the knight's armor. That's right. He set the metal fragment down carefully. But here's what most folks forget after that battle. Some of those who tried to take the cannon joined the Texian cause, became some of our finest defenders. He turned back to me, and his eyes held something I hadn't seen since our empire fell, hope. Texas remembers its enemies, he said softly, but we remember our friends even better. So what's it going to be, Freeb of the Voidborn? You want to keep running from your past, or help us build a future? In that moment I understood something that had escaped our ancient kings, something that all their quantum crystals and reality-warping crowns had never taught them. True authority doesn't come from what you can take. It comes from what you choose to give. I removed my sensor implants, the equivalent of a Voidborn warrior removing his crown, and let them clatter to the deck. The sound echoed through Texas Command like a quantum spurs song. General, I said, my natural voice carrying the harmonics of my people's oldest oaths. I believe we would be honored to learn what Texas remembers. Kennedy's smile was like watching a star go nova in slow motion. Well then, he drawled, replacing his Stetson with practiced ease. Let's start with the proper way to wear a hat. Around us, the knights relaxed infinitesimally, their quantum spurs humming with what my remaining sensors recognized as approval. Above the tactical displays, I caught a glimpse of the Texas Command seal, a single star, a cannon, and words that I finally understood weren't a threat, but a promise. The eyes of Texas are upon you. And for the first time since our empire fell, that felt like protection rather than judgment. Welcome home, indeed. Indeed. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave it a like and to subscribe if you'd like to see more. Feel free to comment and share it as well. With all that said, go on and check out the video in the top left. I think you might like it.